And what's up, Dragon Brood? We're going to be looking at day 4 of Bloomburrow previews, and it looks like there is a lot of cards, even more than yesterday. I think we're looking at about 40 cards today, so we're going to have to go pretty quick. But there are a lot of commons and uncommons, so we probably won't be spending a lot of time on each one. But let's go. Right, we have Persistent Marsh Stalker. This is a colorless and a black for a 3/1 Rat Berserker. It gets +1/+0 for each other rat you control. Whenever you attack with 1 or more rats, if 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, you can pay 3 mana. If you do, you return this from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. Yeah, this is actually solid. This is one you're probably going to play in the rats deck if you're playing like the aggro make a bunch of rats build, right? It's bigger for all your other rats. If later in the game there's at least 7 cards in the graveyard, you can pay 3 when you're attacking and get this into play, which is probably going to be at least a 5 or 6 power creature. So yeah, nothing to complain about at this one. This one's definitely playable. Long River Lurker, 2 colorless and a blue for a 2/3 Frog Scout. It has Ward 1. Other frogs you control have Ward 1. When this enters, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. Whenever that creature deals combat damage this turn, you may exile it. If you do, turn it to the battlefield under its owner's control. This card is interesting because it's a weird creature lord in the sense that it gives an ability to all your other creature types, in this case frogs. Having Ward 1 on everything is super nice, and being able to make something unblockable is actually pretty good, and because so many things in this deck are likely to have enters the battlefield abilities, pretty cool to be able to have it leave play and come back. So this is probably playable. Not the most like efficient thing, only being a 2/3 creature, but the abilities are really good on this. Husk Burster Swarm. 7 colorless and a black for a 6/6 elemental insect. This costs 1 less to cast for each creature card you own in exile and in your graveyard. It has Menace and Death Touch. Oh man, I feel like we've been getting different versions of this card where, you know, for the number of things in your graveyard, something will be cheaper or whatever. This is probably fine. Like, obviously, you're not going to play it early, but if you play 2 or 3 things that mill yourself, there's a good chance you're playing this for like 4 mana for a 6/6 fairly early in the game. And with Menace, it does make it more of a problem than some of the other versions of this that we've seen. So, maybe playable, we'll see. Harnesser of Storms, 2 colorless and a red for a 1/4 Otter Wizard. Whenever you cast a non-creature or otter spell, you may exile the top card of your library till end of turn. You may play this card. This ability only triggers once each turn. This ability is good to kind of keep you going, right? Like you can keep having cards off the top to trigger all your stuff that wants you to cast non-creature spells or whatever. Cool part is this triggers on an otter, so you could play another one and then maybe play a spell if there's something on top, so that's kind of sweet. I don't know if we want to be paying 3 mana for a 1/4 with upside, but maybe. This one's a hard one to gauge because we don't know what the rest of the otters look like or what that deck's going to want you to do in total. So this one's a maybe, but it's not bad if you're on a budget. Driftgloom Coyote, 3 colorless, white, 3/4 elemental coyote. When this enters, exile target creature and opponent controls until this leaves the battlefield. If that creature has power 2 or less, put a +1/+1 counter on Driftgloom Coyote. So you're paying at best 5 mana for a 4/5 and removing a 2 power or less until later. Man, this is probably not playable. Like, limited, sure, because you can just get any creature off the battlefield for a while. But in constructed, this really doesn't have a chance. Knuckle Boxer. That's a funny name, but a colorless and a green for a 3/2 Raccoon Berserker. Whenever you expend 4, and that's if you spend your 4th mana on a turn to cast a spell, the Boxer gains indestructible until end of turn. You know, if I'm playing aggressive raccoons, this is fine. It's a 3/2 for 2 with possible upside, especially if you have some combat tricks. So nothing to complain about on this one. It's not sexy, but it's playable. Starfall Invocation, 3 colorless, white, sorcery, gift a card, destroy all creatures. If a gift was promised, return a creature from a great. Yeah, alright, sure, it's a sweeper, fine. Moonstone Harbinger, 2 colorless and a black, 1/3 Bat Warrior Flying Death Touch. Whenever you gain or lose life during your turn, bats you control get +1/+0 and gain Death Touch till end of turn. This ability triggers only once each turn. I hate paying 3 mana for a 1/3, but a 1/3 with flying and Death Touch that also gives your other stuff +1 and Death Touch. And that's if you've lost or gained life on your turn. So Only on your turn can you give your stuff Death Touch, which a lot of the bats are going to fly, so I'm not sure how much we're worried about other blockers, but getting everybody +1 isn't bad. So yeah, this is another one that I don't know for sure if you want to play this yet, depending on the casting cost of the other bats we want to play, but at the very least, if you're looking for a budget replacement, this is one to keep an eye on. Coruscation Mage, colorless and a red for a 2/2 Otter with Offspring 2. So you can pay 2, make a 1/1 copy when you cast it. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, the creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. Yeah, we've had versions of this card before. It's a 2/2 this time, as the most recent one I believe is a 1/3. But yeah, this is fine. I think if you're playing the Otters and playing a bunch of spells, this makes sense. It's just free damage. Season of the Burrow, 3 colorless, white. Choose up to 5 paws worth of stuff. So 1 paw, you create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token. 2 paws, you exile target non-land permanent. Its controller draws a card. Or for 3 paws, return target permanent with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with an indestructible counter on it. This might be the best one of all of them so far. The fact that it only costs 5, where the others I think all cost 6 or 7, maybe 6. The abilities on this one are all good though, right? Like you could make 5 1/1s if you want to. You could exile 2 things. Your opponent would get to draw a card, and you still make a 1/1, so that's fine. I get to draw 2 cards. Or you could just return something and then make 2 1/1s, and that's fine too. Like every one of these abilities is really good on this, and it's fairly cost effective for what it's doing. All right, we got to hit the translation bin for this one. This is called a Mockingbird. It is an X and a blue for a 1/1. It has flying, and you can have it enter as a copy of any creature on the battlefield with mana value equal to or less than the mana spent to cast this, except it's still a bird in addition to its other types and has flying. Okay, that makes sense. Mockingbird, so it copies stuff. You get to make a copy of a thing, but the thing is a bird and has flying. Yeah, if I'm playing the bird deck, I go ahead and play it, right? Why not? If I'm not playing the bird deck, do I want to play this? I think that's a little bit of a different question. Could still be a useful card though, and it'll be a fun one to have in Commander. Yeah, this is playable, but I think in very specific circumstances. Still in the translation bin here, we have a colorless and a blue. I do not know what this name is. It looks like it's a sorcery that create a 1/1 blue and red otter creature token with prowess. If this spell would cast from anywhere other than your hand, you put a +1/+1 counter on that creature, and it has a flashback of 4. So you make a 1/1 otter, it has prowess, but if you played it from somewhere in their hand, you're making a 2/2 otter. You get flashback, you can play it later. There's a lot of things we've already seen with otters that let you exile from the top of your library and then cast it, so that could make it easier as well. But you are paying 2 mana for a 2/2 that isn't the best, that couldn't just already be a creature that's always a 2/2, you know what I mean? And many of them have prowess. So probably not playing this. I mean, again, this could be a reasonable budget replacement for something, but generally you're probably not playing this. Splash Portal. It's 1 blue for looks like a sorcery. Exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. If that creature is a bird, frog, otter, or rat, you draw a card. Huh. Yeah, you get to save a creature, and then, yeah, this is fine. It's a defensive card, but there are a lot of things that have enter the battlefield triggers in the set, so you could get to reuse something, and it works in a variety of decks. Basically all the creature types in the set that care about blue, so bird, frog, otter, rat, all can play this card. So yeah, it's going to get played somewhere. Hearthborn Battler. 2 colorless and a red for a 2/3 lizard warlock. It has haste. Whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, this deals 2 damage to target opponent. Whenever a player casts their second spell, so it's not even the player who casts it takes the damage. Just when anybody plays their second spell, you can deal 2 damage to an opponent. For lizards, this is probably playable. I mean, it's a 2/3 with haste for 3. You can get the trigger before you even attack. So, the lizards have a lot of stuff that cares about if the opponent lost life this turn or whatever. So yeah, this could be playable for sure. Bandits Talent. So it's another class card. So colorless and a black. When it enters, each opponent discards 2 cards unless they discard a non-land card. Then you pay 1 to go to level 2. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, they lose 2 life. And then for 4 mana, you go to level 3. At the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card for each opponent who has 1 or fewer cards in hand. So yeah, this is obvious. If you're playing a discard type deck, you go ahead and play this. This forces your opponent to discard more cards unless they want to discard a non-land thing. You get to deal some damage and then periodically get to draw more cards. Yeah, this is fine. If you're playing a discard deck, this is definitely playable. All right, Wick the... Whoa, why did you use this word to describe this guy? Y'all know... Y'all know what this is going to look like. But all right, Wick the World Mind. 3 colorless and a black, 2/3, legendary creature, rat warlock. Whenever Wick or another rat you control enters, create a 1/1 black snake creature token if you don't control a snail. Oh, a 1/1 black snail creature token if you don't control a snail. Otherwise, you put a +1/+1 counter on a snail you control. All right, so every rat, if you don't control a snail, will make a snail. If you already have a snail, then you just put a +1/+1 counter on the snail you have. And then you can pay a black, a red, and a blue. Sacrifice a snail. It deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to each opponent. Then draw a card equal to the sacrificed creature's power. Oh, that's cute. So it comes into play, you make a snail. If you have the mana, you could then have something else come into play next turn, put a counter on your snail, attack, fling your snail effectively, and you get to draw 2 cards. Like, I'm okay with this. Like, it's not, again, not super insane, but also, could you just pair this with something else that plays a bunch of snails? Maybe. I don't know, but it's neat. I don't know how good it is just yet, because it is asking you to have mana for 3 colors to be able to activate its ability. Might be possible, but something to think about. Paw Patch Formation. Colorless and a green. For an instant, choose 1. Destroy target creature with flying. Destroy an enchantment. Draw a card. Create a food token. Yeah, this is just playable. Now, again, depends on the format. However, some number of people are going to be playing birds, and those fly. Obviously, there's almost always enchantments to kill. But worst case scenario, it's draw a card, make a food? Okay. Yeah, this is going to go somewhere. Into the Flood Maw. 1 blue for an instant. You can gift the tapped fish. Return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. If the gift was promised, instead return target non-land permanent an opponent controlled to its owner's hand. So you can return a creature, or you can return any non-land if you let your opponent have a 1/1. Yeah, this is one of the better unsummons, if you know what that card is from back in the day. This is one of the better versions of Unsummon we've had, probably. Like, this card's really good. Nettle Guard, colorless and a white for a 3/1. Its Valiant ability is whenever Nettle Guard becomes target of spell's ability for the first time each turn, it gets +0/+2, so it becomes a 3/3. And you can sacrifice this to destroy an artifact or an enchantment. Yeah, mice will play this. Why not? Waxwane Witness, 3 colorless and a white for a 2/4 Bat Cleric. It has flying, it has vigilance. Whenever you gain or lose life on your turn, Waxwane Witness gets +1/+0 to end of turn. Yeah, this is more limited playable. 4 mana, 2/4, flying vigilance. Occasionally it's a 3/4. That's not terribly exciting, at least for constructed play. Light Shell Duo, 3 colorless and a blue for a 3/4 rat otter with prowess. When it enters, Surveill 2. Yeah, again, I think we could do a little better here. If I'm on a budget and I just need more otters, sure. This is also a rat and an otter, which works in both decks. Prowess for one deck, Surveill better than the other deck, most likely. It's fine. Not likely to see a lot of play in constructed, though. I think there's better stuff we could probably be looking at 4 mana. Waterspout Warden, 2 colorless and a blue for a 3/2 frog soldier. Whenever this attacks, if another creature enters the battlefield under your control this turn, it gains flying until end of turn. This one's on the verge, right? It's a 3/2 for 3, which is meh, but okay. But if you have anything, because there's so many blink effects that are moving things in and out of play with the frogs, like this could almost always be attacking with flying. I'm inclined to say you're not going to play this in 60 card, but I'm not going to be surprised if it shows up. Darkstar Augur, 2 colorless and a black for a 2/3 with offspring of 1. So this is the first time we've seen a 1 cost offspring. So for 4 mana, you can get 2 copies, one being a 1/1, one being a 2/3. Both of them have flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library and put that card in your hand. You lose life equal to its mana value. So this is a Dark Confidant on a 2/3 flyer that you could potentially have 2 of. I don't know. Do we want 2 of them? Is the thing. Like, you're getting 2 cards, but you're also risking losing the extra life. But if you're playing Batch, you're probably also gaining life. Yeah, this is going to get played. All right, Starlet Souser. It's colorless and a black. So 3 for a 2/2 flying bat. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained or lost life, Surveill 1. I do not think this is good enough for those decks to play. We've already seen too many other things bats can do with 3 mana. This isn't making the cut. Wix Patrol, 4 colorless, black, black. So 6 mana for a 5/3 rat warlock. This ability needs to be really good. When Wix Patrol enters, mill 3 cards. When you do, target creature and opponent controls gets -3/-3 tone a turn, where X is the greatest mana value among cards in your graveyard. A 6 mana 5/3 that probably kills 1 creature. I don't think we're playing this in Constructed, but you will definitely play this in Limited. Frilled Spark Shooter, 3 colorless and a red for a 3/3 lizard archer. It has menace, it has reach, and it enters with a +1/+1 counter on it if an opponent lost life this turn. So very likely a 4 mana 4/4 menace reach. You know, I've recently played with the 4/4 Cactus Folk from from Thunder Junction, the green red one. It's a 4/4. It has reach and ward 2, and then gives other stuff haste that's power 4 or greater. That was playable and actually solid. So I'm looking at this and saying, for an easier casting cost, 3 colorless and a red, very likely a 4/4 the way these decks are built, with menace and reach. It's at least worth considering. I'll say that much. Take out the trash. I was about to say, if this does not have raccoons, but it's right there in the artwork. Colorless and a red for an instant. Take out the trash, deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If you control a raccoon, you may discard. If you do, draw a card. Oh, man. All right. So it's a 3 mana or 2 mana deal 3 to a creature or planeswalker, but a raccoon upside that you could discard to draw a card. I think I still want to play Lightning Strike first to just go at somebody's face for their life total. But if I want to play a second pseudo Lightning Strike, I might consider this card. Clifftop Lookout, 2 colorless and a green for a 1/2 Frog Scout with reach. When it enters, reveal the top of your library until you reveal a land. Put that card onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is pretty sweet. It's 3 mana, 1/2 reach, but then you get to put a land onto the battlefield. It's tapped, but it is a ramp spell that also gets you a body. I mean, I guess we have that now, where you get the option of either searching for a basic, making a food, or making a 1/1, and you get any 2. This makes you a 1/2 with reach, and still get you a land. But yeah, it's at least worth considering. I'm not going to say it's good, but maybe. Peerless Recycling, a colorless and a green for an instant where you can gift a card. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. If a gift was promised, instead return 2 permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. Oh, man. Probably not. I mean, if it put something into play, I would say for sure. But it's just, I mean, giving your opponent a card so you can return 2 things to your hand, maybe there's a world where you're surveilling or milling yourself a bunch and you want to get something back, but generally, I don't think this is going to see that much play. Polywallop, 3 colorless and a green, and for an instant, the spell costs 1 less for each frog you have. Target creature you control deals damage equal to twice its power to target creature you don't control. Well, if you're playing frogs, you play this because it's likely, at worst, like a 2 mana removal spell, so sure. Helga Skus Seer, a green, a white, and a blue for a 1/3 frog druid. Helga doesn't sound very much like a frog, does it? But Helga Skus Seer. When you cast a creature spell with mana value 4 or greater, you draw a card, gain 1 life, and put a +1/+1 counter on Helga. Then you can tap this, add mana of any color, where X is, add X mana of any one color, where X is this card's power. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells with mana value 4 or greater, or spells with an X in their mana cost. Wow, this is a quirky card. So you spend 3 to get a 1/3. And then if you spend 4 or more, actually no, it's if you cast a creature spell with mana value 4 or more, you put counters on this. I mean, I guess some of the frogs are kind of pricey, but oof. I think we're going to try it at least with this card, but this is probably better as a commander than as something in your 60 card deck. All right, Vine Reap Mentor, colorless, or not true, it's a green black, so it's just 2 mana for a 3/2. Vine Reap Mentor, 2 mana, 3/2, Squirrel Druid. When it enters or dies, create a food. That's it? That's the text box? Yeah, this card's good. If you're playing, I'm assuming, black-green squirrels anyway, this is a 3/2 for 2. It's a squirrel. It comes into play, makes a food. It dies, makes a food. There's all upside on this card for 2 mana. Yeah, of course, we're playing this all day, every day. Honestly, this card, now I'm thinking about it, this card's kind of silly. Yeah, this is a really good card. Bumbleflower Sharepot, 2 mana artifact that happens to not be a food. Interesting. I guess because the pot itself isn't food. When it enters, though, you create a food, and then you can pay 5 and tap it, sacrifice the Sharepot, destroy target non-land permanent, activate only as a sorcery. This is obviously a limited playable card, so you can use it to destroy anything. But it does make a food, which is kind of cool, but I don't think we're playing this in Constructed. Hidden Grotto. It comes into play, Surveill 1. You can tap for colorless, tap to add a mana of any color. This just moves your mana out in limited play. We're not playing this in Constructed, even with the Surveill option, I don't think. Right, another season. We have Season of Gathering. 4 colorless, green. Choose up to 5 paws worth of modes. The first one is put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control. It gains Vigilance and Trample until end of turn. You can pay 2 paws, choose an artifact or enchantment, destroy all permanents of the chosen type. Or you can pay 3 paws, destroy draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. So this is kind of sweet in the sense that, like, for 6 mana, you get a pseudo overrun, right? You can put a +1 counter on 5 things, and they all have trample and vigilance, so that's kind of cool. You can destroy all artifacts or all enchantments, or both, if you want to, and have 1 left over, put a +1/+1 on something. Or you can just draw a bunch of cards with this. So yeah, playable. 6 is a little high, but I get it because of what it's offering you the ability to do with this deck, or with this card. But yeah, 6, the thing is, all the abilities are playable, so it's reasonable to consider this could show up in some decks. But being 6 and not 5 actually is a really big deal on which decks will even take a chance on it. Gossip's Talent. Whenever a creature you control enters, you surveil 1. So every creature you surveil. This also costs 2, by the way. You can pay a colorless and a blue. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature with power 3 or less can't be blocked. That's pretty cool. And then you pay 4 to go to level 3. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you can exile it, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. I think the static ability and level 2 are probably what this is going to get played for the most. But yeah, it's at least usable. I don't know what decks want it necessarily, but if you are playing a bunch of small things and you want to make stuff unblockable, there you go. Whiskervale Forerunner, 3 colorless and a white for a 3/4 Mouse Bard. Oh, this is a large text box on this Valiant ability. Whenever it becomes targeted of a spell or ability you control, for the first time each turn, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You can reveal a creature with mana value 3 or less from among them. You may put it onto the battlefield if it's your turn. If you don't put it on the battlefield, you put it into your hand, put the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. Okay, big text box, but not anything crazy. So 4 mana, 3/4. When it's targeted, you just get to put a free creature into play if it's 3 or less. Yeah, this could be close to the upper end. I think there was another 4 mana mouse, though. So you may have to choose, split like 2 and 2, or 3 and 1, or whatever. But this is a good ability just to be able to get creatures into play without having to overcommit. Mouse Trapper. That's a fun name. 2 colorless and a white for a 3/2 with flash. And a Valiant of whenever it's targeted, blah, blah, blah. Tap target creature an opponent controls. Neat ability. Probably better for limited. Not likely to see much play in constructed, I don't think. Tapping something down is nice, but I think the mice can do more with 3 mana than this is doing. But it does have flash, so that's something to consider. Curious Forager. They could have just went Curious Forage, which would have been closer to Curious George, which would have been funny. But regardless, this is a creature. So, Curious Forager, 2 colorless and a green for a 3/2 Squirrel Druid. When Curious Forager enters, you can forage. So that's remove 3 from a graveyard or sacrifice a food. Whenever you do, return target permanent from your graveyard to your hand. So this lets you return. Yeah, so the other spell that we said was probably not going to get played returning stuff. This potentially could get played because you get a 3/2 and still get to return something for only 1 more mana. So yeah, more into this than I was that other spell we were talking about. Plume Escort, colorless and a blue for a 2/1 flash flying bird scout. When it enters, target creature you control gains hexproof to end a turn. Alright, I could get with this. This is just give something hexproof to protect it, basically. And then you have a 2/1 flyer on your turn. So yeah, this is fine. Like, definitely playable. Wishing Well, 3 colorless and a blue for an artifact. Tap, put a coin counter on Wishing Well. When you do, you can cast target instant or sorcery card with mana value equal to the number of coin counters on Wishing Well from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into the graveyard, it's exiled instead. Play this as a sorcery. This is pretty straightforward. Just let you reuse stuff out of the graveyard for free. This is the type of card I could see some of these spell matters decks. If you want to play something on the upper end, you could play like one of these just because, and then each turn cast something for free. But that's probably the best use of it. However, some control decks could lean on this as well. Being able to replay some card drawing spells or, tutors or whatever could be worth doing. So this could make a home in the control decks too. Daring Wave Rider, 4 colorless blue 4/4 Otter Wizard. When Wave Rider enters, you may cast target instant or sorcery with mana value 4 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If it would be put in your graveyard, exile it instead. Cool card. Better for limited. 6 mana 4/4 is nice with nice upside, being able to play something 4 or less, which is a pretty big spell. But I don't think you're trying to do this in constructed. Kingfisher, 3 colorless blue for 4/5 bird knight with flying. Whenever another non-token bird enters, you create a 1/1 blue fish creature token. So you're playing a 5 mana 4/5 bird, but you have to play another non-token bird to get a 1/1 fish. So you end up with the fish, the non-token creature, and the kingfisher, or nightfisher, I guess it is. I said kingfisher because I think that's a real fish. That's where my brain went. This is nightfisher. Yeah, we're not playing this, I don't think. This feels a bit convoluted unless there's cards that particularly are non-birds that care about birds. But even then, I don't know if it's worth the investment just to get a 1/1 fish. This is Long River's Pull. So it's got a blue instant. Counter target creature spell. If the gift was promised, instead counter target spell, gift of a card. So you can counter a creature spell, or you can give your opponent a card and counter any spell. This will likely get some amount of play. I mean, it's clean, it's easy, it's a counter spell. Yeah, why would you not? For the common good, XX green. Create X tokens that are copies of target token you control. Then tokens you control gain indestructible until your next turn. You gain 1 life for each token you control. So you can pay, let's call it 7 mana. You'll make 3 tokens that are copies of another token you control. Then all your tokens have indestructible till your next turn. So you can do whatever you want. Your opponent can't easily wrath or whatever to kill them, and then you get your turn. You also gain a life for the number of tokens you'll have after you make all those copies. Interesting card. Don't know how much you want to be investing 5 or 7 or 9 mana to get the big use out of this. But I will say, if you're already playing something that makes a lot of food and a lot of squirrels or whatever, you are gaining a significant amount of life with this, even if you just do it for like 3 and you make like 1 extra token. So might be playable, just depends on what the decks in the next standard format end up looking like. Man, I have to say, the uncommons today were crazy. There were so many, and a lot of them are really good. So yeah, good on Wizards. There's going to be a lot of options, especially if you're in a budget to build decks with. But we're starting to see a lot of these decks come together and starting to kind of feel like how we could build these. And then we're going to have to start looking at what stuff that already exists that will support some of these themes that we're seeing come together through these last couple of days. But let me know in the comments what your favorite card was that you saw today, because there was a lot, and I'm kind of curious what people are hyped about. Also, if you want to see some more reviews, I'm going to link those here for you. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.